Coming up, my new book, Vindicating Trump, is just out. In fact, officially out today. And there's a good deal of references to Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar in this book. I'll explain how that's connected to Trump and how that's connected to our contemporary situation. A Middle East expert and best-selling author Joel Rosenberg, he joins me. He's normally based in Israel. We're going to talk about the ongoing struggle that Israel is waging on multiple fronts against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthi terrorists, and the regime of the Iranian mullahs. If you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Today is the official publication date of Vindicating Trump, the book. And I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And I've been doing a good bit of publicity, both for the movie and the book. The movie, by the way, is in its sort of fading days in the theater. Not to say that it won't stay in some theaters, probably stay in about 60 or 70 theaters for another week. But normally these days, movies don't stay in theaters all that long. So today and tomorrow, if you haven't seen it in theaters, you want to see it in the theater, go today or tomorrow if you can. Vindicatingtrump.com is the website. You can get tickets right there. And you can also, I was going to say pre-order the book, but it's really not pre-ordering it anymore because the book is now out. So if you order it, you'll get it immediately. You'll get it right away. And one of the questions I want to touch on here is, what is this book actually about? What is the underlying kind of argument of the book? And the argument of the book turns on a theme that was prophesied more than a century ago by Abraham Lincoln, a young Abraham Lincoln, where he warned of the coming in America of a new kind of Caesar. Now, Lincoln says a Caesar or a Napoleon or an Alexander, but the Caesar analogy is the most specific and I think relevant to our purpose. Why? Because Alexander and Napoleon mainly gained their power through foreign conquests. But what Caesar did was establish a kind of autocratic or dictatorial rule. Now, Caesar did have foreign conquests, but ultimately Caesarism has to do with mobilizing within the country a kind of popular lawlessness, if you will, and then harnessing that to making Caesar into a kind of all-powerful emperor. Now, Lincoln warned that this might one day come to the United States. He thought it might come in his own time, and he never specified who the Caesar would be. Some people said, well, of course it's Lincoln. Lincoln himself is the tyrant. Lincoln was not, in fact, a tyrant, but Lincoln did have the dimension, the power to be a tyrant, particularly once the war started. Lincoln had essentially military control, and he could, under justification of military necessity, do things that he couldn't do before. Now, in our own time, is Trump a Caesar? Well, I want to argue that the reason that the left calls him that is because he does have the dimensions of a Caesar, somewhat like Lincoln. Here's a line from Shakespeare as Julius Caesar, and this is Cassius talking about Caesar. He goes, "Why, man, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus." In other words, Caesar is just this huge, larger-than-life figure, and it seems like everything revolves around this guy. What is he doing? People are for him or against him, but it's really all about Caesar. And Cassius says that compared to Caesar, the rest of us are like these little mini, we're like these Lilliputians. He calls them petty men who walk under his huge legs. This is, I think, part of what's going on with Trump. Trump is a larger-than-life figure. He has the capabilities to a point of being a Caesar, but my argument is that he doesn't want to be one. Now, the left says that Trump will become one if he is given a second chance. And this is, by the way, also what the conspirators against Caesar say about Caesar. In fact, interestingly, in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, Caesar hasn't done anything tyrannical. And yet, here's one of the conspirators, a guy named Flavius. These growing feathers plucked from Caesar's wing will make him fly an ordinary pitch, who else would soar above the view of men and keep us all in servile fearfulness. What's he saying? He's saying, hey, listen, Caesar's like this big bird. We need to pull his feathers out right now because that'll keep him from flying too high. And Brutus kind of takes the same approach. He goes, he would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. It is the bright day that brings forth the adder, meaning the snake, and that craves weary walking. Brutus is saying basically, Caesar hasn't become a tyrant, but he could be. He could become one. And that's kind of what the left is saying about Trump. Don't give him the chance because he will be a dictator. Well, here's the problem with that line of analysis. Trump was in power. Trump actually had the opportunity to become a dictator, but he didn't, right? Debbie makes this point. She goes, if Trump was a dictator, he was like the worst dictator in the history of the world. He didn't control the police agencies of his own government. He didn't rig his own elections. Dictators are not used to losing elections and having to move out of office. Trump, of course, believes he won, but a dictator who believes he won wouldn't leave. Trump did leave. So the evidence is that Trump didn't go after his political opponents. He didn't try to assassinate Hillary. He didn't try to indict her or lock her up. So the point is that the dictatorial threat is coming from the other side. And here's a final quote from Caesar that has relevance to our purpose. Here is Mark Antony. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him with the kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? So Antony wants the mob to answer, no, it's not ambition. I gave him a crown 3 times. He said no. But of course, Antony is much more shrewd than that himself. Antony knows that Caesar was, in fact, had the ambition to become an emperor. And the reason Caesar refused the crown is that being an emperor is very unpopular in Rome. Ever since Rome drove out the Tarquin kings, Rome has been a republic. So Caesar doesn't want to seem like he's undermining the republic. In other words, he is a would-be dictator that is disguising himself as somebody who doesn't want to be a dictator. In fact, he pretends like all he's trying to do is follow the rule of law. If he was a modern-day Democrat, he would say, all I'm trying to do is save democracy, not undermine it. And this is an insight into the nature of the Caesar that we're dealing with today. It's obviously not an Italian guy in a Roman toga, but rather it is a regime, a leftist and democratic regime that is accumulating the powers of a Caesar, operates like a Caesar, wants to have dictatorial power, is exercising its dictatorial muscles. Think about mass surveillance, systematic censorship, criminalization of political differences, political prisoners, trying to get rid of the leader of the opposition party. All of these elements are, all of these signature defining elements of dictatorship and police states, all coming from the Democrats, all coming from the left. So this is the kind of philosophical underpinning of this book. I wanted to just touch on it with a few key references to Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, so you know that what you get in this book is not only a very timely analysis of Trump, of the Democrats, of all the character assassination, the political assassination, the lawfare or legal assassination, of course, the actual assassination attempts, all of that is in the book, but encompassed in a sort of historical and philosophical frame that I think you'll find very interesting and very provocative. With the massive tax hikes proposed by Harris, an almost 40% top income tax rate, 7% increase to the corporate tax, a capital gains tax on unrealized gains, all of these proposals, tax and spend proposals, could add almost $2 trillion to a current $2 trillion deficit. Wow. You might be thinking it's time to make more of your savings tax sheltered and inflation sheltered. Well, this is where the people at Birch Gold Group can help you. Birch Gold will assist you in converting an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And the best news, you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just text the word Dinesh to 989898. You'll get a free information kit on gold. gold. There's no obligation, just information. You can fortify your savings before the crazy finally hits. With an A-plus rating with a Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers like me and Debbie, Birch Gold is the place to be. Contact Birch Gold. Get it started. You have nothing to lose. Text Dinesh to the number 989898 for your free information kit today. The radical left is working overtime to gain control of the Supreme Court. They want to end lifetime tenure so they can end the court's conservative majority. And this has happened in other countries. It's very bad news. Remember when Hugo Chavez reformed Venezuela's Supreme Court? Debbie and I have had this discussion many times. She warned me about Chavez's total destruction of Venezuela through the destruction of the court system. He never lost a ruling or an election. And packing the court ensured Venezuela would never be a free or a capitalist country again. Now, more than a decade after his death, Venezuela is still in the grips of tyranny and chaos. We can't let that happen here. If we lose the court, quite honestly, we lose the country. And that's why my friends at First Liberty are fighting to save the court. You can help them. To win the fight, they need 1 million patriots like you to join. How do you do that? Learn more at Supreme Coup. Supreme, C-O-U-P. So go to supremecoup.com/Dinesh. Guys, I'm always delighted to have back on the podcast Joel Rosenberg. He is an author, in fact, New York Times bestselling author of 17 novels, 5 nonfiction books. He's also founder and editor of 2 news and analysis websites, All Israel News and All Arab News. His website, joelrosenberg.com. And follow him on X at Joel C. Rosenberg. Joel, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I mentioned yesterday that it was the 1-year anniversary of the October 7th attacks. Obviously, there is a bitter ongoing conflict and war going on, not just around Israel, but now seemingly having expanded into Lebanon, with, of course, Iran being the prime orchestrator or choreographer of a lot of this. When we look back on October 7th, maybe we'll begin with this. It seems to me that we're not just dealing with a kind of an episodic event, but maybe kind of an epical event that will be recorded in history and have a bigger meaning, perhaps somewhat similar to 9/11 and somewhat similar to historical events that we remember now as signals of something very big that is happening. Do you agree with that assessment about the singular importance of October 7th?
Well, Dinesh, great to be with you, and thank you for giving this topic so much attention. Yes, this is a critical turning point in the history of Israel and the history of the Middle East. We actually have one war going on, though it's occurring against Israel on 7 fronts, but it's a war with Iran. And all of the terror proxy armies that we're going to talk about in the next half hour, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the others that are in the West Bank and Iraq and Syria and so forth, all of it is driven by the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime has declared that it's going to annihilate Israel. And the Iranian leadership, starting with the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has been very clear. He himself is a 12er, and he believes that the end of days has come, that Judeo-Christian civilization will be over, and it's his role to either destroy Judeo-Christian civilization as we've known it, or at least set into motion its destruction, meaning Israel as the little Satan in their end times theology, and the United States, let's be clear, is the main target as the great Satan in their view, because they view Israel as the center of Judaism, of course, and they see Israel, the United States, as the center of Christendom. Although that's questionable over time, but anyway, that's their worldview. And the point is, that's it. The supreme leader Ali Khamenei believes it's time to destroy Judeo-Christian civilization as we've known it, and to lay the groundwork for the coming of their savior, their so-called savior, the 12th Imam. So Hamas is the smallest player in this, but Iran used Hamas in a very strategic way, meaning Israel's leadership knows that it's focused on the Iranian threat and the Hezbollah threat. But Prime Minister Netanyahu really considered Hamas, let's use some management terms, a tension to be managed, not a problem to be solved. He did not believe that that Hamas was a strategic threat. He trusted, we thought we had a good border wall and that we had good surveillance and intelligence, and he just didn't take any of the signals. Not just him, it was the rest of the entire Israeli security and intelligence apparatus. But, the buck stops with Netanyahu. It was a catastrophic failure, which is exactly what the Iranian leadership was counting on, which is invade Israel from Gaza, then start firing tens of thousands of missiles at Israel from Lebanon, Hezbollah, and then from rather other places in the region, including Yemen, 1,800 kilometers away, and then use this to blow up the Israeli-Saudi peace and normalization agreement, which was imminent at that point. And then that should set into motion the end of Israel as we know it. That was the strategic plan. And Israel was caught off guard.
Now, let's evaluate the progress of that plan. It seems to me that on a couple of fronts, it's quite clear that Iran has made pretty massive headway. Number one, they have activated a relatively global base of support, not just from Muslims around the world, but also progressives. I mean, this is a very interesting and peculiar alliance between sort of Islamists or fanatical Muslims on the one side, and on the other hand, these relatively permissive cultural leftists who nevertheless have made common cause with Iran. And this is putting a certain amount of global public opinion pressure, if you will, on Israel, and to some degree making Israel feel more isolated. Do you agree that this has so far been a kind of PR win for the Iranians? I mean, imagine, you or I launching an attack, a vicious attack, and then somehow making the victim of the attack the global bad guy. I mean, that's got to be seen as in a cynical way, as some kind of an accomplishment.
True, and I don't even think that was something that was on the Iranian regime's wish list. I think that they intended to inflame the Muslim world against Israel and say, look, all your trend lines that you're heading, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco and the Saudis and everybody trying to make peace with the cancerous Zionist criminal entity, that's like it needs to be is a tumor to be removed from the region and so forth. You're all going in the wrong way. Come with us. That's the Iranian regime's objective, was within the world of Islam. Now, they saw the United States as weak. Obviously, they saw the Biden-Harris administration as weak, and therefore, if Biden couldn't handle the Taliban in Afghanistan, how are they going to handle Tehran, right? So and the Russians had just invaded Ukraine, and Biden had done, not that much. Maybe to help Ukraine not lose, but not really to help Ukraine win. So that whole analysis was Biden's weak. Nobody's going to stop us. And the Israelis are divided, right? We were in the midst of a huge judicial reform crisis, and Israeli fighter pilots and other reservists were saying, we're not going to serve. We're not going to serve in a military if it's subservient to a dictator, which they called Netanyahu. So the point is, it looked like the perfect moment to catch Israel off guard and inflame the Muslim world. I don't think that the supreme leader in Iran or his inner circle thought that the rest of the world would turn against Israel too, that the South Africans would take Israel to court at the World Court as committing genocide. I don't think they thought that the British would put an arms embargo on Israel. I don't think they thought that Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, would put an arms embargo on Israel. And you know, the campus uprisings, that's just gravy. That doesn't really help them strategically, but it's, you know, it's nice if you're a demon-possessed leader of an anti-Semitic country, sure, that's good. But all these other geopolitical developments, I think, have surprised the Iranian regime. They can't believe their good fortune. But in the last month, Israel has risen from the ashes. It's taken us a long time. But suddenly the tide is turning, and Israel is right on the verge right now. Netanyahu is on the verge of deciding if he's going to launch the biggest military attack on the Iranian regime of any country since Iran and Iraq went to war in the 1980s. I mean, but Biden and Harris are putting enormous pressure, as is the British, as are the French and others. Don't do it. Netanyahu, don't escalate. And Netanyahu's like, escalate? What in the world are you talking about? We're attacked from one country on 7 sides. It's Iran. And we have destroyed Hamas. We've won in Gaza. We've destroyed 50% of the missile arsenal of Hezbollah, and we've taken out their top 4,000 leaders, including Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the 32-year veteran of leading Hezbollah. We have a window we've never had. And I think we are in the most dangerous hours and days now, Dinesh, of this war over the past year, because I think Israel under Netanyahu wants to go for the jugular and take out the head of the octopus, as it were, whose tentacles are trying to surround and strangle us. The world is telling, and the White House is telling Bibi, don't do it. You can say Bibi's a strong leader or you think he's crazy or whatever you think about him. But when the world's only superpower is pressuring a little country of 10 million people, who, by the way, the United States buys and builds all of the arms that we use, it's a lot of pressure to go it alone and hit the biggest state sponsor of terrorism on the planet, who's just on the verge of breaking out and going into nuclear weapons. So this is like the stuff that I write about in my political thrillers, Dinesh, except it's all too real.
Be right back with Joel Rosenberg to explore the situation in the world and specifically in Israel. Be right back. I want you to order from Balance of Nature, but before you do that, listen to what I have to say. If you go to balanceofnature.com to buy this is their popular product. It's fruits and veggies, supplements, fruit and veggies in a capsule. So easy to take. You'll see a discount offer pop up and it may say 20% or 25% off your first order. Well, don't click that. Why? Because if you use my promo code, you'll get 35% off your first order plus free shipping. The special code is simply one word, America. Use the code and save big. Here's another bonus. Balance of Nature has a risk-free money-back guarantee. So go ahead, find out for yourself what I already know. There's no other product out there like Balance of Nature when it comes to fruit and veggie supplements. Whether you order online or call direct, you got to use promo code America to get the special offer. 35% off and free shipping. Here's the number to call, 800-246-8751. Again, it's 800-246-8751, or go to balanceofnature.com. Use discount code America and you'll get 35% off plus free shipping. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight. It's healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community. And forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. Empower yourself today. Take control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. Learn more and see how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. That's shareright.org/Dinesh for healthcare done the right way. I'm back with the one and only Joel Rosenberg, editor of All Israel News, also host of the Rosenberg Report, website joelrosenberg.com. Joel, let's talk for a minute about Israel, because it seems like one of the things that maybe the Iranians did not count on was the fact that a politically and ideologically, maybe even a culturally and morally divided Israel would quickly and decisively come together, that Netanyahu would be able to set up a war cabinet, which would include the opposition, in a sense creating an Israel of one mind. And this one mind, if I think back to 9/11, America sort of had one mind, but it seemed to last for like 3 months. In other words, the old divisions quickly came back, and the unity became a distant memory pretty quickly. Now, with Israel, it seems that for the past year, this kind of singularity of purpose has held pretty well. Is that true? Because that would seem to be really important force behind Netanyahu as he thinks about these big decisions that you've just mentioned. He's going to have to need a country that is really fully behind him. Does he have that?
Yeah, it's a great question that you're asking. I'm starting with your analogy though to 9/11. A couple key pieces to start with. The first thing is, when you think of the 1,200 Israelis that were and some foreign nationals that were massacred on October 7th, we're talking about people children being shot to death in front of their parents, parents being shot to death in front of their children, people being beheaded, a Jewish baby being put in an oven and baked alive, whole families, including Holocaust survivors, being burned alive in their homes, women raped, men raped, little boys and girls raped. It's so demonic. 1,200 murdered that day savagely. And then if you put that in the context of the size differential between the United States and Israel, it would be like 40,000 Americans dying in one day. So when you think of the devastation of 3,000 Americans, almost 3,000 on 9/11, and how that changed America forever, imagine 40,000 dying today or tomorrow. What would that do? And the United States went into a 20-year war against Afghanistan, the Taliban, and of course Al-Qaeda, as well as the war in Iraq. And of course Biden then surrendered at the end of that 20 years. But the point being, Biden is now exhausted and exasperated by that Israel has been in a 1-year war. Okay. And that's crazy. That's crazy. The United States fought for 20 years and then didn't win. And so Israel has to win. We don't have the industrial complex. We don't have a continent. We don't have 1/3 of a billion people to build all the weapons we need to go on for a long war. Our strategy is short wars. So my point is, yes, Iran's regime and Hamas specifically unified and did in Israel on October 7th what nothing else in Israel could do over the past year before that, which was to unify the country. And all the reservists came back, all the fighter pilots came back. And in fact, the fighter pilots that killed all the top 18 leaders of Hezbollah are all people that were saying, I'm never going to serve, right? So Israel does well when we are forced to come back together by external enemies. We don't do so well when we're disagreeing with ourselves. And it was a very serious disagreement, and the disagreement hasn't gone away. And so all those divisions remain underneath. But Israel is unified. And I'll say this. So about 10 days ago, I was interviewing former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett at an event that All Israel News and our nonprofit ministry, the Joshua Fund, had put together for donors and key prayer partners and evangelical leaders. And we interviewed Bennett. Was a keynote for October 7th and all that. And then he took questions, and we asked him, because he's the leading voice in Israel about needing to topple the Iranian regime and hit the Iranians hard as soon as possible. And so it was actually the night before Nasrallah was assassinated, and before the 200 or so missiles had been fired by Iran at Israel, which was last week. So this is just before that. But we asked him, if you were prime minister today, what would you do? And all that is up on our YouTube channel at All Israel News. But I'll just say this. He not only said, what he has been saying, which is it's time to topple the regime before they get the bomb. But then a couple days later is the moment Iran attacked again, he told Netanyahu, look, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, Bennett is the most popular leader in Israel right now, but he's not in government because he's right wing. He's been very strong. He's been very clear. He's not part of the people that were a part of this catastrophic failure on October 7th. And he's saying, as an opposition leader, Bibi, go hit Iran like we've never done. We've always thought we should. This is the moment. And Netanyahu's getting that from others in the opposition as well, but Bennett's the clearest voice. And so I say that to tell you, yes, Israel is unified. Now, understandably, we're not used to defying our number one patron and ally, the United States. On the other hand, we're not used to our number one ally, the United States, having a president that cuts us loose in the middle of a hot war from 7 directions. So we're not used to that. And it's disorienting. It's discouraging. And I can't tell you right now. My instinct is that Netanyahu is going to go and hit Iran in the coming hours or days. Now that the grieving of the actual ceremonies of October 7th are over, I think now all bets are off. But Netanyahu is also a very cautious person, and he has a responsibility not to turn the ire of this White House against him because he doesn't know what's coming. Is he going to get Harris or is he going to get Trump? Harris is telling him, don't do it. Trump is telling him, do it. Bibi, now is the time. You've got to hit the Iranians. It's crazy talk to think that anyone would not do it. This is the moment. And I'll back you.
Joel, that's awesome. But this is fantastic. Let's go for a moment to the motivation of Macron and the British and Harris and Biden. Do you think that their opposition is based upon some blueprint of a two-state solution, if you will, or some rapprochement, some détente with Israel, some new picture of the Middle East, or the second possibility, a little more Machiavellian, that they're really all responding to domestic political pressures? There are a lot of Muslims in France. There are quite a few Muslims in Great Britain. Of course, one of the key swing states for the election here in the United States is going to be Michigan, which is got a lot of Muslims in the Dearborn area. They could very well be the swing vote. What is your take on why let's just say a Democratic Party that has in the past been fairly uniformly behind Israel, just like the Republicans, has now sort of become the party that, if not, has not turned anti-Israel, is now playing a sort of studied neutrality between Israel and its enemies?
Yeah. I think there's two major factors, there's three, I guess, but you're definitely picking up on the threads. The first is these leaders hate Netanyahu. They just hate him. Now, Netanyahu even rubs many Israelis the wrong way, too. So don't get me wrong. Naftali Bennett, who is in the opposition against Netanyahu and is more popular than Netanyahu, he was Netanyahu's former chief of staff. Most of the center-right leaders in Israel are former chiefs of staff or senior players next to Netanyahu, who then were like, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's not that I have massive disagreements with Netanyahu on policy. I just can't work with him any longer. So that's a problem that Netanyahu has. And I say that as someone who worked for him 24 years ago and just met with him a few months ago and admire him, but also see his weaknesses. So, but I don't hate him. and Israel, but Biden, says he loves Bibi, but he doesn't. He's used the worst kind of vulgarity that the White House has leaked about his view of Netanyahu. So, and that's true of the others. Now, it is true that there is domestic pressures in these countries, particularly in France and England, from the Muslim population of countries that sort of had an open border policy and said, let all of North Africa come, whoever they are. It doesn't really matter. it's changed their societies and it's changed their politics. But ultimately, underneath all, or wrapping up all of that, I think the simplest way to put it is that the spirit of Neville Chamberlain is alive and well. Surrendering to Nazis is pretty much, appeasing to Nazis is pretty much the way it's done now in the center-left world of Biden, Harris, Walz, Obama, Macron, the British, and so forth. That's the way it's done. You don't. The words victory are not in the lexicon of the center left of the world. Or let's just call them left, progressive left. The words, like just the idea of permanent ceasefire, which is we would just translate it into surrender. That's the language of the left. Trump's view. And I would say Boris Johnson's view and other, Scott Morrison's view when he was prime minister in Australia. If you look at the center right, you're talking about victory. You're talking about the spirit of Winston Churchill, right? Victory at all costs. We'll fight them, at the sea. We'll fight them on the land. We'll fight them, in the countryside. We'll fight them wherever. Victory at all costs, and we will never surrender. The spirit of the age today is the same spirit of the age in the late 30s and early 40s. Are we going to surrender because we don't want to provoke the enemy, or are we thinking, no, we're the world superpower and we have more power, and if we hit this early, we can win? Well, why are we surrendering? Why are we cutting our allies loose? But that's the divide, and it's painful
it was
to be a part of it, to be watching it. And
I remember reading about Hitler when he met with Chamberlain and was asked afterward what he thought about Chamberlain and more generally about Great Britain. And Hitler made the observation that the Chamberlain never went anywhere without his umbrella. And for Hitler, that sort of indicated just that little thing, that a little bit of rain, the guy needs his umbrella. Hitler concluded this is not the England of like Sir Francis Drake. In other words, I don't have to be scared of this guy and of the country that he leads. And I think this is a phenomenon you're saying is still with us. Let's take a pause. When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about what an operation against Iran might actually look like. Mike Lindell's a great guy. He has a heart of gold. Mike and MyPillow love giving back to those in need. They just sent a truckload of 14,000 MyPillows to those impacted by Hurricane Helene. But even though he loves to give back, a large retail store just canceled Mike. They canceled a huge order, and the order had already left the warehouse. So guess what? Mike has decided, besides giving to the people in need, he wants to pass some big savings directly on to you. For the first time ever, you can get a standard classic MyPillow for wholesale prices, $14.88. Wow. It gets better. For a limited time, they're offering their entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Get queen-size MyPillows, $18.88. Upgrade to a king for only $1 more. Get the body pillows for $29.88. Multi-use MyPillows, just $9.88. Here's the number you can call, 800-876-0227, or go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh. Take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever. On top of that, receive free shipping on orders over $75. By the way, these deals have never been offered before. There are limited quantities of this price, so the limit is 10. Once they're gone, they're gone. Go to mypillow.com or call 800-876-0227. Don't forget the promo code. It's DINESH, Dinesh. I'm back with Joel Rosenberg, editor-in-chief of All Israel News, also host of the Rosenberg Report. Follow him on X at Joel C. Rosenberg, website joelrosenberg.com. Joel, Israel, as you mentioned, is a country of around 10 million. The Iranians, if I'm correct, have around 70 million. So Iran is a pretty large country, and in fact one of the big players in the Middle East, perhaps along with Egypt and Saudi Arabia, the three big Muslim powerful Muslim entities in the region. And my question is, what would let's say that Netanyahu decides, all right, you know what, this is my window of opportunity, I need to go for it. Now, Israel has won some perhaps I could say miraculous wars in the past, 1948, 1967, 1973. So Israel has shown that they can be David against a Goliath, if you will, and still come out ahead. But this must nevertheless be a daunting prospect, because you've got a powerful country in Iran. They seem fairly unified, or at least I'm kind of amazed that they've been able to hold that country together since the Iranian Revolution. There were a lot of divisions in Iranian society preceding that. How would you envision something like this playing out? I mean, I notice people are very, maybe even glib and say, oh, that would be the start of World War III. And to me, you don't have to go to World War III. You just have to think, well, that's just going to be a very serious war in the region. How do you see it?
Well, there's so many variables, but let's take the first answer will be there's two basic ways it could play out. The first way would be a 6-day war style, or maybe better, let's say the 73 war, right? Because 73 Israel was hit hard and didn't expect it from the south, Egypt, from the north, Syria. It was so bad that very famously, Moshe Dayan, who was the defense minister, told Golda Meir, the prime minister of Israel, it's time to get the nuclear weapons out of storage and prepare them to save the country. She had a big fight with him over it and decided not to do it. And in fact, conventional forces and enormous U.S. help, an airlift of military supplies from the Nixon administration, 24 hours a day, turned the tide. And Henry Kissinger played a key role because Nixon was embroiled in Watergate. So anyway, so that's the right analogy, that after getting hit hard and being on your heels and thinking you're going to lose the whole country, Israel was able to rally, fight, and win decisively. Okay. Now that was with American help. So now you have a situation in which America, I want to be clear and I want to be fair about Biden. Biden has helped a lot in the early stages, but more recently, in recent months, even though he signed the bill that into law that Congress passed $26 billion worth of aid towards Israel, right? With all kinds of new weapons and aid and ammunition, but Biden won't send it in a quick way. Okay, so that's why Israel, he's using it as leverage. So my point is, Israel has rallied off of, we were hit hard. It was terrible, but we've destroyed Hamas. There'll be mop-up operations for months, but Hamas is over in Gaza. We've destroyed 50% of the missile arsenal in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and we've taken out the top 4,018 leaders. So that's going well. More to do, but we're winning, and they're in shambles. And now we have this opportunity. So it could be a knockout blow. We could see in the next hours or days, Israel use ballistic missiles from Israel, fighter jets with air-to-ground missiles on them. They could use missiles off of Israeli submarines lurking off the in the Gulf. I would prefer to call it the Arab Gulf, but the Persians call it the Persian Gulf. Whatever. They're right there. They can turn Tehran into glass. That won't be the objective, but they have, Israel has a capability. Plus, we can throw some switches and take out the entire electrical grid of Iran. We can hit their oil refineries. We can grind that country down to a Stone Age, pre-energy world. And Israel might do it. I don't think turning Tehran into glass, we're not trying to kill civilians, but we can shut down the country, the banking system with cyber warfare. So all of those things, Netanyahu either has decided and is getting all the pieces in place, or he's wrestling. And I don't know the answer to that. But that's one answer, which is a week from now, a month from now, you might have me back, Dinesh, and say, oh my gosh, Joel, you were right. Israel is now the dominant superpower in the Middle East, bar none, and they did it without American help. So that's one option.
Just when I think about that, the global benefits of that would seem to be spectacular. And by that, I mean, not only is Iran, the head of the snake, so to speak, chopped off in the region, but think of the reach of Iran in places like Venezuela, South America, the Iranian lobby in the United States. So, weird though this is to say, it would be not just a massive blow to Islamic radicalism, because think about it, Islamic radicalism, really going back to Khomeini, has only had a secure hold over one state, and that's Iran. And therefore, they've been using that state as the export.
Well, I would say they've had control over most of Lebanon and now Syria. And I would say they have effective control, not total, over Iraq. So and of course, Yemen. So but I understand what you're saying. But yes, it would be a devastating blow, and it would completely reshuffle the deck of geopolitics and economy and oil movements and so forth. You could see the rise of the Iranian people at that moment, and Crown Prince of Iran in exile, Reza Pahlavi, whom I've interviewed, who's been to Israel, he could become the next leader of Iran. I think that's a little more than I'm anticipating right now. But when we win, if we win and we win decisively, the Saudis will make peace with Israel. That will be a thunderclap. If we destroy enough of Hezbollah, the Lebanese may really rise up. I would see that faster than the Iranians to rise up and get rid of Hezbollah. I can see Hezbollah people being lynched in the streets, certainly arrested and shot. And then Lebanon wanting a peace treaty maybe a year from now or sooner with Israel. But that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, I won't call it worst, but the worst case scenario is they have the bomb. Iran has the bomb. We don't know it, and we're nuked. Okay, that's the worst case scenario. But it could get very, very messy. And Iran could not only fire its 3,000 ballistic missiles and get many of them through, it could fire the rest of the 75 or 100,000 missiles that Hezbollah has in Lebanon, and it could activate sleeper terror cells in the United States and Europe and around the world to kill Jews, kill Christians, kill Israelis, and wreak havoc. It could be bloody and it could be messy. And yes, Israel and the United States would still win eventually, but Israel could get blamed for setting into motion global chaos, and that would be a disaster for us. So I think as an evangelical Israeli, I think God is on our side. I don't think God's happy the fact that most Israelis don't read the Bible or believe in him or care, much less know his son, the Messiah, Jesus. That's an issue, and that's a related but separate issue for the moment. But he still loves us, and he's made promises to us. So I believe Israel's going to win and win decisively, but I can't tell you how messy it will be between now and, it may take 6 months. It could take a year. But when the smoke clears, Israel, I believe, will be the dominant power in the Middle East, bar none. The Saudis will make peace. The Lebanese will make peace. The Indonesians will make peace, and more countries will. That's what I see in the next 6 to 18 months.
Let's close out, Joel, by me just asking you a final question. How do you think about all this, if at all, in terms of a sort of the framework of biblical prophecy? In other words, is that something that you find sort of interesting, but to the side and to be considered separately from the kind of, we've been doing in the past 30 minutes, a pretty straightforward, strategic, and I would say largely secular analysis? When you think about these things, do you think about it in purely secular terms, or are you also thinking, the Iranians look at this sort of apocalyptically through a spiritual lens? Well, guess what? We do too. I want you to close out by just offering a thought about how you, if at all, apply the Bible and thinking about these kinds of contemporary situations.
Well, Dinesh, I appreciate you asking, because I've been invited all over the world to talk about Bible prophecy. And obviously Israel and Iran are major players. The United States isn't. We're not mentioned in Bible prophecy, but Israel, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, all these countries, Egypt are. And I look at it in both ways. If somebody wants to talk just pure geopolitics, I'm happy to do that. And I'm critical of those who study or teach Bible prophecy who immediately lurch and make every single moment aha. And that's related to the end times. Short version, I would say several things. There are several end times elements here. First, Jesus said in Matthew 24, when you're looking at the list of birth pangs, contraction, release, that will precede the delivery of the one that you want, right? That's his second return, his return, Christ's return. When you look at the birth pangs, you're looking at wars and rumors of wars, big ones, things that change the game, right? You're looking at kingdoms rising against kingdom, nation against nation. We're clearly seeing that. We saw it in Putin invading Ukraine. That's a contraction. We've never seen a land war that big since World War II. So that's, in my view, is a biblical Matthew 24 contraction. So is this. On October 6th, Israel was in a release. We felt peaceful. We felt safe. October 7th started a contraction that has not let up for a year. That's painful for us going through it. In the broader picture, some have speculated we're heading into Ezekiel 38, 39, where Russia, Iran, Turkey, and others form an alliance to come against Israel. I think that's premature to say that, but I would be watching for it, right? I mean, under Erdogan, Turkey is now accusing in recent hours, days, accusing Israel of invading Turkey. That's insane. Erdogan has claimed that Jerusalem is his, and he's coming forward. He's offered to send troops to help liberate Gaza. Like, that's the language that you would be watching for, both geopolitically, but also prophetically. But has Netanyahu? Has in Russia, has Putin turned his attention and his ire against Israel? He's made some strong statements, his people have, but no, we're not seeing yet Russia moving. But are they close to Iran? Is Iran pleading with Russia? Get in here and help us. Like, I know you're busy in Ukraine, but we in Iran are giving you the weapons that are giving you any success that you're having in Ukraine. Come help us in this war. Hasn't happened yet. So these are the things that to watch for, but not to get weird about. 27% of the Bible, Dinesh, is prophecy. Half of them have already come true. The other half, most of them, happened between now and the second coming of Christ. There are, of course, prophecies about after Jesus comes back. So there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to talk about. And we should, but most pastors and Bible teachers and seminaries and Bible colleges, they don't even talk about it. So it is important to talk about. And God wants to give us advanced intelligence on what's coming, but we dare not lose our heads. I'll wrap up by saying two last quick things. First, Jesus says, when you see the birth pangs, he says it's not the end, it's the beginning of the end. And so, don't get scared. I'm telling you this in advance so that you will understand that I haven't lost control. This is leading towards the arrival of the one you're waiting for anyway, which is Jesus. So it should give us encouragement, and Christians should be blessing Israel and preaching the gospel and making disciples, because we're getting late on the game clock. That's one thing. The other piece to remember is a prophecy that's less known, and that's from Amos, the Hebrew prophet Amos 9:9, chapter 9, verse 9, where God says, he's talking about the future. He says, I will shake the house of Israel among the nations. That's what I believe we're in right now. God didn't send this invasion, this attack from seven sides. That's Satan. Satan, who Jesus describes in John 10 as the thief who comes to rob, kill, and destroy. Satan is trying to destroy Israel and the Jewish people right now. But God has sovereignly let it happen. Why? To shake Israel. Shake Israel into stop depending on America, stop depending on your on Hinduism or New Age or atheism or whatever you think. Look, there's a God. He's the God of Israel. He's the God of the Bible. He sent a Messiah. It's time to wake up and smell the Starbucks. It's time to pay attention. David, our greatest king and warrior, wrote Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. Well, most Israelis have forgotten that there's a shepherd, that he's good, that he's strong, and that we need him. So the problem is, if you're a sheep and you abandon or ignore your shepherd, you're assuming that the countryside is safe. But the Bible makes it clear the countryside is not safe. It's not a neutral environment. Either follow God and your shepherd and love him and be blessed, or, do whatever you want. No, there are consequences to abandoning your shepherd. And the consequences are that there are ravenous wolves who are trying to eat and devour you. And that's what we're experiencing. We're also experiencing the judgment, honestly, of the Palestinians of Gaza. I hate to say that, but it's true. You curse Israel for 76 years straight, and you elect a government that's genocidal and bloodthirsty. Now, you didn't get another chance to vote for anyone else, but nevertheless, there are consequences to cursing Israel every single day. It comes from Genesis chapter 12. God says, I will bless those who bless you. He's speaking to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, David, the nation of Israel. I will bless those who bless you, but those who curse you, I will curse. Now, as Christians, we need to have compassion on the Palestinians of Gaza and all Palestinians, and share the gospel with them and humanitarian relief and help them build a new future. The way we showed compassion to Germany after World War II, the way we showed compassion to Japan after World War II, Korea after the Korean War. Like, you have to win, but winning and vanquishing your enemy doesn't mean not showing compassion. It is showing compassion, but we didn't start this war. The Germans did, the Japanese did, and now Iran and its allies have. So the Palestinians are experiencing a judgment. That's just true. It's hard to say in the 21st century, but it's true. So these are the things that we need to watch for. But then we got to go back as Christians, at least, and say, what does the Bible tell us to do for our neighbors? Love them. What about for our enemies? Oh, love them. How do we do that? We don't have time to get into all of that, right? It's not a sermon, just a thought. But the point being, God does love Israel, and he has raised Israel up from the ashes, right? No other book on the planet besides the Bible told us that Israel was going to be a nation in the last days. Nobody believed it. I mean, maybe somebody wrote a book about it, but nobody believed it. The church fathers didn't believe it. Martin Luther didn't believe it. Augustine didn't believe it. But it's true. And God is drawing his people back, and he's rebuilding this country, and he's trying to draw his people to himself. My team isn't listening that well, but God will stay lovingly drawing us. So that's where we are. And it's not the type of thing that every podcast or radio or television show host wants to talk about, but it is important. And I appreciate you asking it. And I hope that this is actually the most interesting and helpful part. But it is important for Christians to not get weird about prophecy, to understand what's really happening geopolitically, economically, socially, but then put the lens of Scripture over it and saying, how do we better understand it when we understand what Bible prophecy teaches? And I think that's part of my role at All Israel News and the Joshua Fund and the Rosenberg Report and doing shows like this. So thank you.
Wow, Joel. Yeah, this is terrific stuff. And yeah, thank you for all that, because I think it's an important part of the whole analysis. And I realized at the very end of the interview, I had neglected to bring it up already. So I'm delighted that you went into it at least a little bit. Guys, I've been talking to Joel C. Rosenberg. Follow him on X at Joel C. Rosenberg, website joelrosenberg.com. Joel, thanks so much for joining me.
It's an honor. Thank you, Dinesh. Thanks for giving the time to a very important week for us.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and salemnow.com.